Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revit Snippets, great tips you can learn in just a few minutes. In today's lesson, we'll see how we can create this parametric louver curtain panel here with a special parameter to control the angle of our louver units. So if I try and select it now, and go to Edit Type, let's say we put this from 15 degrees to 45. There we go, everything updates nicely. The family also has other useful parameters. For example, you can change the spacing between those louver units. If I put it a bit further up to 100 mil, you can see they are really spaced out now. And of course, if I want to change the frame dimension, that's easy as well. If I take this a bit up as well to 100, you see it's going to do it. That's a bit too thick. Let's go a bit back to 50 mil. Now, before we begin to create this family, we publish tutorials like this every single day, so if you're trying to master Revit, make sure to subscribe to this channel to get those videos as soon as they are online. Okay, let's create this now. That's the entire curtain panel, by the way. And now we can create it using a template called curtain panel. Let's go to New, Family, and choose this family template here. Curtain wall panel, here we go. If you look into the exterior view of this family, we have here the frame for our curtain panel. That's the top plane, bottom plane, left plane, and the right plane. However, before we do anything in here, let's go ahead and create our louver unit in a separate family. We will later on nest that louver unit family into here and create our parametric array. So let's go back to File, New Family. And this time I'm going to go for just a generic model template. It's time now to create our angle parameter. I will go to Reference Line, and I just draw a reference line starting from the origin point of this family, maybe going this way. Next step, I can now create an angular dimension to show this angle. We can now select this and turn that into our first angle parameter. I'll just simply call this one angle. That's good for now. Next step is to make sure that the endpoint of our reference line is always there where the two reference planes intersect. To make sure that happens, I will need to create a double alignment. So go to Align, click on the first plane there, and then press Tab until you can get to the endpoint of this reference line. You can see it's highlighting up there as a blue little dot. Let's click it and then choose to lock it. Repeat the same step, but this time for this other plane. So click on the plane now, press Tab to get to the endpoint of the reference line, and then click it to then lock it. Now if I go to Family Types and try to flex this angle parameter, let's see what happens. Nice. So the reference line will rotate according to our angle parameter, but it will always start from there, and that's important because we want the profile to be here. It's just the angle of the profile should change, not its position. So far so good. Let's now create our extrusion. Let's go to Create, Extrusion. And before you try and draw anything, make sure you set the work plane now to be a plane on this reference line. I will choose Pick a Plane to do that. And then click on this plane there. As you can see, it's highlighted in dashed lines. That's now selected. I can now create my profile for the louver unit. You can go as detailed as you like here, but I will go for something quite simple. Let's do a quick arcs with a slight curve like this. And then just quickly mirror it so I can have the other half. And now let's try to connect them using two other arcs. That will do. And this one as well. Okay, now I can move this to where the origin of the family should be. Here we are. And now it's important that I should rotate this profile now to align it to this reference line. Let's do rotate and rotate it this way. Looking nice, I can now finish the extrusion and try to change this angle parameter. How about back to 15 degrees? You see, that's nicely rotated along with my reference line new angle. We can now check this extrusion in 3D. If I go to 3D now, is one single extrusion going straight up. We can now switch to a front view and create 2 more reference planes to control the length of our louver unit. So the first plane will be here, and the second one will be down below. I can now create a dimension to make sure that the distance from here to the reference point is the same as the distance from this same point to the other plane. And to do so, just click on Equal. Next step, we can control this overall length using an overall dimension and turn that dimension into a parameter. It's time now to make sure our extrusion spans the entire length that we need it to do. So I can now drag this plane there and lock it. Do the same here and lock it there as well. It's good now that we have to save this family. Let's make sure you don't lose anything. I will call this one Louver unit. And because we're here, let's create a material parameter as well. So just go to here and just name this one simply material. Save it, and now it's ready to be loaded into our curtain panel family. That's family 6 there. Now it's in here, I can now save this family with a good name. Louver curtain panel. And now it seems we can just start placing this louver unit, but not yet. We need to define for it a placement plane as well. And to do so, we need to actually go back to the family. So let me go back there to louver unit. This time we will go to this family categories button and tick the box for work plane based and untick the box for always vertical. Click OK now and bring it back to the curtain panel family. It's time now to place it. I can now go to the left view and just create it here in the blank space. So component, place on a work plane and set the work plane to be center left right. As you can see, it's kind of mirrored, so let me mirror it back. Just like this. We can now test our angle parameter. If I go to edit type now, I can change this to 30 degrees and it will rotate just nicely like that. Anyway, to make it more useful, we need to tie it somehow to the frame of our curtain panel. And to do so, I need to set up the scene as well, just a little more. So let's create some additional reference planes here. The first one is here for the top offset. For this, I will need another one here as well. And similarly, let's do the same for the bottom. So one plane there and the second plane there. Now this panel is a bit high. If I try to make a dimension here from the top plane to the other plane along the reference level, make sure you pick the plane here and not the level. By default, the level will light up. As you can see, you have to press tab now to get to the reference plane underlying it. So the height at the moment is 4 meters. That's a bit high for a louver panel. Let's try and change it to something more meaningful. I can now click on this and link it up to a new parameter. Let's call this one height. Now here comes the critical part. You need to make sure you change this parameter type from type to instance. The reason is we need this curtain panel to take its sizes from the condition it's going to get from the project. That means that the curtain system should give this panel its sizes, not something we can define in here in the family. And that's why we need to keep this parameter flexible. As an instance parameter, it can do that. The second thing to notice is you need to tick this box here for reporting parameter. Again, because this parameter value will be derived from the project, that means you need this parameter's value to be reported to you, not something you put in yourself. And that's why we need this to be an instance reporting parameter. Let's do OK now. And we can now try to move our top 3 reference planes there along with the louver unit a bit down. Maybe to here. And you can see straight away, because this parameter is reporting, it has changed itself to reflect the new height. Let me make it a bit smaller so we have a bit more space here. It's time now to make our additional dimensions. So one here, the same one below, and 2 more on the other side. I can now call the smaller ones boundary offset. The reason being, sometimes you have mullions along the boundary of this panel, and in that case, you will want the panel to step back to make space for those mullions before the panel geometry can generate, and this parameter will let us do that. Next dimension to convert is this one here. Let's call this one top offset. The reason we need this is because you wouldn't want your first louver unit to start straight from the boundary. Otherwise, it's going to clash with the frame. That's not nice. We need to have this offset parameter here to step back this unit a bit away from the frame and make it more realistic. A similar concept applies down here. We need the same parameter up there, but this one we can call it base offset. You can feel free to give those two the same parameters. I'm just doing them separately so you can maybe have a choice of having maybe a bigger offset down below and a smaller one up there, but that's entirely up to you. Alright, looks like we're ready now to move our louver unit to where it should be. Let's go to the move tool and bring it right there. Now, to make sure it's going to stay there where this plane intersects with the other one here, we need to lock it into position. And here comes the double alignment trick once again. Let's go to Align, select this plane there, and lock it to this horizontal plane in the family. You can see there's a long one that's sliding up there. Just click it and choose to lock it. A similar thing to happen now on this other direction. So click on the plane now, and then click on the plane in the family to lock them. Okay, to keep this entire formation, I should now select this dimension and lock it. Same for this one here, and do it 2 more times down below. Now let's say we try and drag this plane up. You can see that louver unit is nicely following the top of the panel. It's time now to see this unit in the plan view. If I go to the level view now, it centers nicely along my center plane of this curtain panel. However, its length is not getting there yet. I need it to be longer to fill the entire space or even most of it. To do this, we need to again lay out some additional reference planes. So, maybe one here and another one there. I can now put them into dimensions like this. And these two can now use the previously created parameter called boundary offset. Because this offset, it runs around the entire 4 boundary lines of the curtain panel. That's why we can have this same parameter driving 4 different reference planes. Next thing to do is to create planes to define the size of our frame. This curtain panel, apart from the louver units, it needs to have its own frame as well. So I can now make another plane there, and one more here. Put them into here using 2 more dimensions like this. I can now get them both and say that should be the frame width. And just like before, I can now try to lock them into positions. Here we go. Well, while we're here, let me make that frame width a bit more realistic. Maybe 50 will do for now. Okay. Anyway, back to the main goal. We were trying to make this louver unit long enough to cover the distance maybe from this plane to this plane. In other words, between your frames. To do so, we need to work out the distance between these two, and that has to come from the entire width of the curtain panel. That entire width I can also report using a second reporting parameter. So from here, let's call this one width. And just like with the height, we can now make this an instant reporting parameter. I can now be free to go to family types and make a new parameter called louver width. Should be an instant parameter too, because remember, this entire width will change in the project depending on how wide or how narrow a curtain panel is. That's why it has to be instance. And now we can say, put in here a formula to work out the louver width from the entire width of the curtain panel. It's going to be something like this. Louver width equal width minus 2 times a total of frame width and boundary offset. Make sure you watch out for the case. It has to exactly match the parameter name. So in here I should have a regular I, not capital I. Here we go. If I do OK now, we can now use that new parameter to drive the length of this louver unit. Go to edit type now and then hook them up. So louver width will now drive the length. And that seems to be correct. It's now time for us to create the parametric array to create the louver system. Let's go back to our left view. Select the first louver unit there and do array to the last item in the array. I can go from here to there. And to begin with, we can say we just want 10 units. So you can see my final unit is some way off. I did that on purpose actually, because I want it to be explicitly aligned to where it should be. In this case, I want this final unit to be here, where this plane intersects this one. Let's do the double alignment trick again. So this plane should be where that plane is. And this plane to that one. And that's how I know the alignment is correct, because I broke it at the beginning and then fixed it manually. Now if you like me, you are a lot more careful about privacy. This may be too much of a spacing. A lot of things can be seen through that gap. Let's see if we can fix that. We can now select one of the units there and select this dimension. That shows you how many units there is in the array. I can now hook it up to a new parameter called unit count. And it should be an instance parameter. Anything that flexes with the curtain panel's width and height in the project should be instance. I'm sure you have seen the pattern so far. And now to drive this unit count, we can go back to the family parameters box and use the formula here. Now it should be height minus 2 times boundary offset, and then minus top offset, and finally minus base offset. And don't forget, you need to have brackets around this entire thing, and then divide it by the spacing. Let's try 100 mil for now. That gives you 13 units. Anyway, I wouldn't want to put this spacing in manually every single time, especially if I'm in a project. So let's make a new parameter now to drive this value. Call this spacing as well and do OK. I can now give this an initial value of 100 mil. And now replace this value with the parameter named spacing. Same count number there, but this time a lot more parametric. Let's now do OK. And you will see we have more louver units already. If I go back in here and change the spacing to something a bit smaller, maybe 75, that gives you more louver units. And because we had the angle parameter, let's try to hook it up in here as well. We can now select one of those units and go to edit type. And now turn this parameter into a link to another parameter in this host family. I'll call this one louver angle. Alright. That means if I now go back to family types, I can change this to any angle I like, maybe 15 degrees. And the entire system should update like this. Well, I kind of like 30, so let's put it back there. And now it's time for us to create our frame. Let's go to the exterior view now. And create a simple sweep. Sketch the path and pick 4 lines. Pick a lock once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. You would then want to make sure they are forming an entire closed loop. This profile, I want to see it now in plan view, so let me just drag it over here. And then switch to my reference level. Finish the sweep path now. I can now edit profile. And now you know what to do. We need to draw a profile for the frame, maybe like that. Again, make it as detailed as you like, but for now I'll just keep it as a simple rectangle. and I want to make sure it's centered along the reference plane. So let's do this and give the overall dimension a parameter as well. This one can be frame depth. Okay. Before we do finish, let's also do align and make sure this line stays on that plane. And this one will stay on this plane. Finish it off. And that's the entire frame for you. I can now make it a bit smaller. Maybe frame depth should only be 100. That's better. Let's go to 3D now. And immediately you can see the system is almost complete. Let's now save this and load it back into our project. I can now place it next to the one I had from the beginning, just by replacing this adjacent curtain panel. Looking great, but it's on the wrong side. As you can see, the louver is facing the other way, and also you have some clashing there. Let's fix it. Firstly, the louver angle. To slope to the other side, we can simply just put this angle to the minus 30 degrees. And that fixes it already. To resolve the clashing of the louver unit on the top and on the bottom as well, we can now change the top offset to something bigger, maybe 100. Here we go. Let's see the bottom. Is there some clashing there? No, that's fine for now. And just like with the other one, we can also change those louvers material. We need to now go back to the family, select one of those louver units, back to edit type, and link this parameter to another material parameter in the host family. Let me call this one louver. And while we're here, we can now do the same as well for the frame. I will call this one simply frame. It's time to bring this back into the project. And now when I select this and go to edit type, I'll have these two ready for me to apply some custom material. How about steel and then something like lumber softwood. You can now try and flex some additional parameters to see that it's entirely and fully parametric. For example, spacing can now be a bit bigger. And that works. So, if you like tutorials like this coming to you every single day, make sure to subscribe to this channel. For example, we have a different tutorial that shows you how to nest detail items into curtain wall mullions. So if I go back now to a level, like level 0 there, you can see those mullions, they all have nested detail items like this, which won't show up in your coarse or medium level of detail drawings. But as soon as you take the drawing to the fine level, they will show up ready to be used in your detail views. To learn how to do this, just follow the link popping up on your screen right now or in the description. Other than that, feel free to practice this new curtain panel trick, and I'll see you in the next lesson.